Well, in retrospect, this was pretty small stuff. A few more years later, I ended up involved with this girl who, among other things, claimed to be possessed by spirits. She said she was a receptor for spiritual things, sometimes good, sometimes bad, and that they would come through her and use her body to exist in physical form. She would randomly pass out, sometimes injuring herself in the process, and wake up as a different person, whom would sometimes attack me. I called BS on this many times and eventually got fairly aggressive with it. I was very skeptical, but at the same time, it was like the horrible thing she did wasn't really her either. It was more like it was an extreme mental illness, plus multiple personality disorders, so that's eventually what I went with. She had lost her pace to live, and I had taken her in before all this possession crap went down. So I was kind of stuck because I felt compelled to take care of her. Not knowing what else to do though, I played along with a lot of her occurrences rather than fighting with her all the time. As much as I wanted to dismiss it all, there were many things that happened that she couldn't have possibly faked. On multiple occasions, these so-called spirits, or alternate personalities in her, would respond to my thoughts. I had a thought about making an analogy about the NFL draft, and she said, "I've seen football before." Then I thought about a person, and she said the name of the person that I was thinking of, which I never told her about before. I normally don't remember my dreams either, but after all this started, I remembered every dream every night until the day she moved out, and they always involved her. She told me that she had a dream we were driving in my car, and there was a metal popcorn noise and smoke. I laughed at metal popcorn, as I couldn't imagine a car making such a noise. A few days later, we were driving home in my beater car, and it starts losing power and making engine noises. The noises weren't remotely close to metal popcorn, but as I pulled over and opened the hood, there was smoke coming out of the oil dipstick tube. Something was certainly messed up with my car, but I decided to try and make it home. We got about a mile or so away and realized that she dropped her purse where we had stopped, so I U-turned to go back. This is when the car lost even more power and started making this loud popping noise that sounded just like metal popcorn. It freaked me out so bad that I crashed the car into the curb and got out and ran. I made such a scene that a cop even stopped to see what was going on. Call it coincidence or possession, either way, the linkage was quite frightening. My second car had some mystery electrical problems at the time, so I had to borrow my mom's car to get to work the following day. When she came over to drop the car off, I was still freaked out and she immediately sensed that something was wrong. I wouldn't tell her what it was in front of my stepdad, so I sort of gave in and whispered to her that I'd talk to her the next day. I had never talked very spiritually with either of my parents and didn't have a very open relationship with them at all. The next day though, I remembered my mom once talking about a dream predicting the future, as well as a couple of other things. So I decided to just put it out there. I only told her that a friend had a dream about my car breaking down, with specific details, and then it came true. She proceeded to tell me that this stuff happens to our family all the time, and she talked about all the weird stuff that happened in the 2 houses we lived back in California. She mentioned experiences and details that I had spent the previous 12 years thinking was all in my head. She also told me about a bunch of things that happened elsewhere that I didn't know about, including an evil presence in another house we had lived at. Finally, this explained some things in my early childhood that I never understood. Now that I've received some understanding of my capabilities, my curiosity had piqued yet again. I decided to join my friends every time they went ghost hunting, and I brought this girl with me. It was largely her idea, although her alternate personalities told me not to. I had mixed feelings but felt the need to find some answers. Well, I definitely didn't get any answers from this, only more problems and an experience that has kept any of us from going back there or to any other ghost hunting spot. It was a cemetery that was known for an evil and hostile presence. With both me and her there, things started up pretty quick after we arrived. At first, it was just a small localized flash of light in a spot that myself and a friend saw a few times. Then there was a chill in the air, and fog appeared and rolled towards us, as if it was chasing us out. We headed back to the cars in a hurry, and the girl starts saying that something is following her underground, and that she feels sick. She then starts getting angry and says that something spit in her mouth. We get near the cars and she started spitting blood into her hands. Then she sat down and passed out. I looked in her mouth to see where it was coming from, but now there was no sign of blood at all. We left and regrouped at a gas station, trying to figure out what to do. She eventually woke up and bitched about my radar detector that was being set off by an automatic door opener. We decided to go back to the cemetery and just play it by ear. Well, as soon as we pulled off the road, she passed out like a light and blood came out the corner of her mouth. Once again, I opened her mouth and there was no sign of blood. I decided that we needed to leave, so we took off, and she woke up a little bit down the road. Later, one of her alternate personalities, or spirits, whatever it was, told me to stay away from places like that as we'll only find bad things out there. There were many more experiences with her, and a lot of them involved some unseen force attacking her. One morning she had a scrape appear on her leg, which she said was the devil burning her. I called BS and said she probably just fell on the concrete stairs outside. However, the scrape started changing in appearance right before my eyes. Another day I came home and found my entire living room piled on top of her. She was passed out, of course, as if there was a tornado. The TV was knocked over and there was a handprint on the dust that was on the TV. The handprint was too big to be hers. She could not explain what had happened and we eventually let it go. Interestingly though, I also found similar sized handprints and fingerprints on various mirrors in the house around the same time. I frequently heard weird noises, saw dark shadowy things out of the corner of my eyes, and the lights outside my front door were consistently flickering, and streetlights started shutting off around me too. As mentioned previously, my second car developed a bunch of electrical problems. The alarm started to sound intermittently and the battery would inexplicably go dead. One day I was coming home from work and just as I was about to reach for my garage door opener, the garage door started opening on its own. This happened a couple of other times afterwards too. But what tops it all off is that I woke up one night at 4 a.m. and found her passed out in the bathtub, underwater and not breathing. I pulled her out of the tub and tried to do CPR even though I didn't know what I was doing. I checked her pulse and it was okay at first, but then it stopped. I ran to call 911, but right before I started to dial, I heard her coughing up water. She woke up and just said she felt extremely cold. What I came to realize is that she, or they, couldn't really hurt herself or me. All of this stuff only happened to her when I was going to be around to see it, and it was just constant chaos and torment that made my life a living hell. The supernatural tried to make it seem like it was a battle of good versus evil, and there was some bigger purpose to all of this. I think it was all evil and the real goal was just to torment me. Eventually she tried to use the bigger purpose story to get me to do things that were wrong, like helping her deceive people. I told her no, that I'm going to stick with my own sense of right versus wrong and not let her tell me otherwise. That was powerful and really helped things in my favor, but it was still no picnic. I couldn't take it anymore and didn't like the person I was becoming, so I very firmly told her that she needed to get out, so she moved back to her home state a few days later. As soon as she was gone, most things started going back to normal. No more weird noises, no more black shadowy things, no more finding all kinds of insects, especially spiders inside, and etc. I stopped remembering most of my dreams, and the ones I did remember didn't involve her anymore. I was still having a number of apocalyptic dreams though, and that's one of the things she said would happen, an apocalypse in the next few years. I was told it would start with the war with Iran in 2007, then another civil war here in the US, and then nuclear war in 2011. I believe this was just an attempt at torment and manipulation, and obviously the Iran thing didn't happen in 2007. Mind you, I was told all of this in 2005. I also happened to come across references to the city that she moved back to, and the number 666 appeared way more frequently than normal in the data that I worked with for my job. It was like something wanted to keep reminding me. This gradually went away, but the number of lights flickering around me has substantially increased. At first, it was just the outside lights that flickered when she was living with me, and I think they stopped after she moved out, and a few street lights that would shut off as I got near them. Over time, the street light thing started happening more and more, which didn't mean much to me, as there are plausible non-paranormal explanations for that. But then it started happening to all kinds of other lights too, which weren't so easily explained. It didn't really bother me until it started happening to indoor lights close to me. I was in the bathroom at work late one night when I felt something creepy, and then the lights started flickering. I concentrated on positive thoughts and said something to myself like, Jesus will protect me, even though I'm not a very religious person, and it stopped immediately. 2 months after that, on my birthday, I was thinking about a family member who just passed away the day before, and a flashlight that I got as a gift turned itself on next to me and started flickering. I kept doing this as I tried to turn it off too. This didn't bother me though, and that was a welcome occurrence. I felt like he was saying hello, letting me know that he's alright. About a month later, I went into my kitchen and the light above my head started flickering, just like the bathroom light at work. This disturbed me enough to leave the kitchen and almost leave my house for the night. I felt clearer to me that it was a warning about a girl that I was seeing at the time and who was on my mind. She had several disturbing similarities to the psycho-possessed girl in my past, but nothing substantial yet. It was an odd coincidence to make me wonder though. I kind of doubt that she's another paranormal freak, but it has at least become apparent that I would be really miserable if I continued a romantic relationship with her. Since I had my own reasons to lose interest in her and she wasn't feeling it either, we're not dating anymore. She's still involved in my life and comes over sometimes. She calls me, I don't call her. So I guess we'll see what, if anything, happens. Hopefully she's normal and the light thing was just a friendly warning that a romantic relationship was heading for serious disaster. I spent quite a bit of time freaked out, but the weird thing is that some of the bigger occurrences just pissed me off rather than scare me. If it were in a horror movie, I'd be freaked out. In fact, I generally avoid horror movies that involve ghosts. But when I kept being bombarded with crazy things happening every day, I guess I got desensitized to it and it got really irritating. Things have been relatively mellow for a few years now, with mostly more subtle things happening these days. I do get freaked out when lights near me start going nuts, or in the rare cases where I see something. I now have a pretty open relationship with my mom and have told her about most of what happened to me, and she tells me what's going on with the rest of the family. My cousin has had dreams come true, and they weren't good ones, which freaked her out and caused her to turn her back on all of this. My mom, sister, and aunt also see or feel entities around them sometimes. When I was 7 years old, my mom sensed something dark and evil in my room, which caused her to make me switch rooms with my sister. I didn't know that was the reason until 15 years later, and I don't know why my sister was any better off, but I assume it was more of a threat to me than her. I did have some disturbing behavior problems up until around that point, although they started before that house. While we lived in that house, I remember feeling creeped out sometimes at night, and we also had a cat that went completely insane and started attacking us. We gave the cat to my great-grandmother, and it was fine once it was living with her. My sister is much younger and still lives with my parents, and there have been cases where some entity will come around, and she will see, hear, and feel it in her room. Then later she'll talk to her mom and find out that they both experienced the same thing right around the same time. This has happened in their current house, as well as an apartment they lived in while the new house was being built. In one case, her boyfriend was over at the house and something started making noise. She said it was like a voice whispering. He asked if she had heard it, but she had to play it off like it was nothing, rather than giving him the whole "my crazy family attracts the paranormal" talk. Our mom was downstairs and heard it as well. She also has electrical disturbances around her which seem to be somewhat related to her mood. In particular, when she breaks up with the boyfriend, things start acting up. I get the impression that it's not quite as intense as what I've had happen, but then again, my stuff was more subtle at first too. The random streetlight thing happens to her too, and my mom has witnessed it, but I still don't put much thought into stuff with outdoor lights. When it's outside and could easily have other explanations, it just isn't very personal and doesn't mean a lot to me. I'm still pretty skeptical about a lot of things, but there's plenty of stuff that I just can't deny.